little technical glitch that we had there, but for some reason, um, my laptop connected to the guest network in our house rather than the main one that's in my office. So that was why the signal was a little wonky. But if you are here, welcome. Good morning. Grab a mug, get a refreshing beverage of your choice, take a break. Hope you'll spend a few minutes with me. Got some fun things to chat about, some interesting things to share, and some serious things to discuss about what's going on in our world. So, if this is your first time catching me live, thank you so much for scrolling, for stopping by and scrolling. I appreciate it so much. But if this is your first time to see me, my name is Monet Harden. I am a self-employed entrepreneur and businesswoman. I work from home. I am an editor and a content writer and a former educator. And so I love helping people learn about their words, how to craft them, how to polish them, how to write them in such a way as to convey a message or help in their businesses or even teach students how to appreciate reading and writing. So those are the things that I do. If you're watching me live here, pop in and please say good morning. I love saying hello to all of my friends who are watching me. And I'm also going to share this link on some social media platforms. Let's see here. So Facebook likes to do things a little differently. And the neat thing that's happening right now is that I am broadcasting live simultaneously on two different platforms. So I'm live on Facebook and on YouTube simultaneously, which is a new thing for me. I'm trying this out. Really appreciate the people who develop the software that I use to go live. They're always adding new and fun features, so I really appreciate that. So I love getting to share the links with my friends and let folks know that I'm live so they can join in and say good morning. So if you're one of those, definitely pop in, say hello, and let me know where you're watching from. Good morning, Kelly. How are you doing, my dear? Good to see you here. Thanks so much for being here. Really love having you here. Good to see you. All right, let's see if Facebook will let me share this. Here we go. Sharing this a bit here. So right now there's no way to, with the current feature of being able to go live simultaneously on two platforms, they're beta testing this, so there's no way for me to advance schedule it. They're still working through some of the initial setups for that. But I love that I can do this because I'm really branching out, doing some new things. And I was inspired by one of my business mentors, John Acuff, to try this. He's building his YouTube channel. I love watching him do that and the growth from that. And starting, an established author and entrepreneur, and yet he is starting something new on a platform, with absolutely zero presence there. So I really love what he's doing. I thought I would try it and get inspired by doing that too. So this software program lets me go live simultaneously on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel. So that's a fun thing. Good morning, hi. So as Facebook lets people know, I'm sure they're gonna be popping in here, like Rachel. Good morning, my dear, how are you? Hello, Andrea, how are you doing? Andrea, listen, everything's going great. I'm healing up awesomely, no problems whatsoever. So praise God for that, right? Well, good to see you here, my friend. Thanks so much. Well, guys, as you know that every morning I ask you to join me for coffee, and I always feature a mug from my rather extensive coffee cup collection. I currently have 180 coffee mugs. My sweet husband is so patient with me bringing all these cups. I've got to figure out a place where to put the cups in the house. So still have to do that, but I'm going to do that in a couple of weeks and just get those all packed up. But I do have some of my mugs here, so I love sharing them with you. So I'm sharing one that's like a throwback. Do you remember concerts? When we used to be able to go to concerts and see shows? Well, so I have this mug, And this is a mug that says, I may be old, but I got to see all the cool bands. And that is true. I've been able to see a lot of cool bands and meet a lot of cool people of those cool bands because I had a cool job at a radio station here in Dallas, Texas, by the way. So today I am sipping and saluting to all of my performing arts industry friends and extended family. Because of you, I had a great time the years that I was raising my kid when my late husband was a lighting designer and production manager for several successful tours and artists. And so that just gave me a whole new window on life and a great life experience for my kids as they were growing up. So I got to see a lot of cool bands. What are some cool bands that you've seen live that you miss? Like, what were some of your favorite concerts, and who's an artist that you really miss seeing live that you really wish you could go to a concert now? You know, I would. I'm a strong woman. Well, you know what, Andrea? I've had a lot of strong women as who have blazed the trail before me. And so I'm just thankful for them, thankful for you. Yeah, so here we are. You love that mug. Well, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, it was fun. I'm trying to remember who gave me this. I think this is one I think maybe my husband had that he let me have. I believe. I'm not for sure. I have to ask him. But yeah, it's a cool mug in our house. And so I figured I'd use it today because I miss going to shows. My husband and I were going to go to a couple of shows over the summer. We love to do that. We love to travel. And so we had plans to kind of go see a couple of shows and go to a couple of places. But that's kind of been on the lockdown now that we are in pandemic. Oh, and by the way, guys, so you know when I've shared with you, remember the little house I used to have up here that had how many days? Well, today is pandemic day number 101. And the number 101 makes me think of the 101 highway in California, another place that I miss, another place that had some, you could really go see some cool bands. So today's Sip and Salute is all about thinking about the great places. Earlier this morning, I had posted about, you know, if you and I were to have some coffee together, where would you take me? And where would be a place that you would like to go have coffee? So yeah, share those thoughts with me because I love that. And it is Throwback Thursday, and we are looking at some interesting things, talking about some interesting things. And I have been sharing some information with you this month from this book. I'm going to take the big bookmark over there. From this book called Creative Schools, The Grassroots Revolution That's Transforming Education by Sir Ken Robinson. Ken Robinson is an expert in creativity, in innovation and intelligence and higher learning. And so I really I love reading his books. When I was teaching, I really became enamored by his books because it helped me sort of shape the way that I taught my English classes. Because again, when you teach a subject like English or literature studies, and you're at a school where you're up against courses like, you know, creating a website 101 or digital photography or, you know, or coding language, you know, having to go through literature, say in the antiquities period, not so shiny and flashy as the other courses. So I had to really rethink the way that I taught and how I would present the material to get the students to engage with it and learn from it, right? Especially if they were preparing to go to college, was really important. So I wanted them to have strong analytical skills. I wanted them to be able to comprehend and then respond to what they wrote and then formulate their own ideas and theses, if you will, on what they would do and how they would apply the information that they were learning. And so that was really important to me. So I've been a proponent of Ken Robinson's books simply for the way, the out-of-the-box way that he thinks about education as a whole. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a chapter in the book called What's Worth Knowing. And I want you to think in terms of your school experience. When you went to school, what were some of the subjects that you loved? What were some of the subjects that you absolutely struggled in? Um, and then if you were able to go back, what would you change to create a richer environment for those subjects that you loved? So I want you to think about that a little bit, because we'll be discussing that today. But I want to share with you something really interesting. And I learned about this place back when my son graduated in 2006, my oldest. So, so he, I've had time to really learn more about alternative and other options of teaching. And this was really interesting. So I want to share something with you, and I want to show you a place, an actual high school that exists that is now much bigger than it was when I first found out about it. Okay. And I want you to take a look at, let's see, some of the things that they have done in their education. Okay, let me see. Let me get here to this screen and share it with you. Here we go. There it is. Okay. This is a place called High Tech High School. Now, High Tech High School started in San Diego, California. It was founded in 2000 as a charter high school designed to integrate technical and academic education. It is now a collection of 5 high schools, 4 middle schools, and 3 elementary schools serving more than 5,000 students per year. A school day at High Tech High School is very different from the day in most schools. So if you look at the photos that are scrolling here, these are examples of some of the work that these kids have done. So there's a whole engineering and design segment. They're still learning the basics of math and reading, but the art and the creativity that these students are creating, the projects that they are creating, are very different from what we see in traditional classrooms. So, High Tech High School builds its curriculum around project-based learning. Project-based learning. Project-based learning goes something like this, says teacher Jeff Robin. You figure out what you want the students to learn. It could be the standards, or it could be something you created. And then you develop a project. You reverse engineer the content into the project. Larry Rosenstock is the founding principal of High Tech High School. He puts it this way: you're taking the methodology of tech, which is group performed, team taught, experiential, applied, and exponentiary, and the content of academics, literacy, numeracy, the humanities, all the things that kids need to know, and you're trying to wed the pedagogy of tech with the content of academics. So here's what a typical day looks like at this school. Students don't spill into the corridors every 40 minutes to change classrooms to study separate subjects. High Tech High divides the day into blocks of time. The aim is to allow for a more sustained and immersive experience in different sorts of projects. There are no bells, Larry said. If you want to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom. There's no public address system. There's lots of doing going on. It's like uncovering the subject rather than covering the subject, right? It's mining the bits and pieces that are so important rather than just scanning the information and checking a list. Our kids do internships in the public and private sectors. It's loose, but it's tight in a different type of way. We're doing field work, not memorizing biology words. Students work with teachers who are working in teams. You're not going from subject to subject, but you're making and creating a lot of things. You're expected to have public exhibitions of your work on a fairly regular basis. You're standing up and presenting quite frequently, and you have to have fun. Now, imagine, if you will, a classroom where that was done. So let me give you an example of how I used to teach my classes when I taught English. we would talk about persuasive writing. And I would talk to the students about, when they were going to grow up, eventually either decide to go into work or into school, they were going to have the skills to be able to present themselves and to propose an idea or pitch something to a client or a boss or a teacher, right? And so what I would do kind of as a fun warm-up project for my students is I would get the cards from the game Apples to Apples. Now you guys, if you're familiar with that or you have kids, you know the game Apples to Apples, right? So you have main subject cards, and then you have cards that are either, like adverbs or adjectives or whatever, but it's a game that you play to make up things. So what I would do is I would break my class into teams. Now, sometimes that was 4 teams of 4 or 5 teams of 4, right? And so I would break them up into groups, and I would give each table some of the green cards and some of the red cards. And from those cards, they had to put together a pitch. So they had to come up with a product. It could be a product, it could be a place, it could be a travel destination, it could be a restaurant, a business, whatever. They had to come up with something, a product. Then they had to pitch that to the rest of the class, okay? Make it appealing, make it interesting. Maybe it's a cause that they wanted you to get behind, right? And then they would, have some time to work on that together. And I would come around the room and I would help them come up with words. What are some ways to persuade the rest of the class that what you have is important, why they need it, why they need to spend money on it, why they want to go there, why they want to eat at that restaurant, why they want to wear those clothes, whatever it was. And the more creativity, the more points I gave them. This was a great lesson in persuasive writing, because as they were writing down concepts and ideas of things that they needed to say and words they needed to use to persuade the rest of the class to listen to them. Now, this was a great icebreaker too, because I usually did this within the first few weeks of class. And this also enabled teams to sort of get to know each other, right? And then with other projects, I would separate those people. I also was able to identify who in my classes were the leaders, who were the ones that were the note takers and really observant. And I would try to work with that dynamic within my classroom. Gave me a lot of freedom to then teach something like Julius Caesar and talk about the political situation that was going on at the time in Rome, and change. And if you wanted to change things in your world, how would you do that? So it was a really interesting way to get my students to engage as we were reading a piece of literature. That's so different from, I need you to read pages 29 to 59. Here are your comprehension questions and your vocabulary words. We will have a test over the material on Friday. I mean, who wants to do that, right? So here's some interesting stats about high-tech high school. You're the note taker, right, Rachel? You were always very observant, but you wrote some incredible papers because the kind of work that we did allowed you to think, to do research, and you were a great research person. You wanted to make sure that what you said had evidence and backup and support, right? You weren't just flying off the handle and talking about something that you didn't know anything about. You really did the research. So nearly all high-tech high school students go to college, and 70% of them go on to 4-year colleges. Now, our college completion numbers are good, and I know there are people that say everyone doesn't need to go to college. I get that. But our hypothesis is that even kids who might not go to college are better served if they are not segregated from the kids who are in programs that will prepare them and expect them that they will be, right? You're laying the foundation of those seeds that may come to bloom a little bit later. So focusing on the quality of learning and teaching also means having the sort of curriculum that makes it possible. Now, We have two types of curriculum in schools. You have formal curriculum, and then you have informal curriculum, okay? So the formal curriculum is the part that is, can be assessed, can be tested, can be quizzed, all right? Then the informal part is whatever is voluntary. That's on the part of the students, maybe the teachers who really take an active interest in their students, right? So those two components together form the whole curriculum. The obvious purpose, Mr. Robinson says, is to provide a map of what students are meant to learn. But the curriculum has another purpose. Schools need a curriculum so they can work out how to use their resources and how to arrange everyone's time and space. Typically, schools divide the day into units of time and allocate them to each of the subjects. Now, this may seem like common sense, but the school day needs to be organized after all, and students do need and teachers need to know what's happening. In practice, it often works the other way around, because you would think that when they do this, that the curriculum would shape the schedule, but that's not how it happens. The schedule ends up dictating how the curriculum is taught. So let me give you an example, and this is taken from some of the excerpts in his book. So one of the new controversies that has come up lately is Common Core. How many of you familiar with Common Core, right? It's a whole new way, a system of a curriculum that was, it was rolled out in the schools, and there's a lot of controversy over it. So some of the fiercest debates in education are about what should be taught and who should decide it. The most heated controversy in education in the United States concerns the introduction of the Common Core standards, which sets out basic curriculum content for literacy, math, and science. According to the architects of the standards, they're designed to define the knowledge and skills that students should gain throughout their K-12 education in order to graduate high school prepared to succeed in entry-level careers, introductory academic college courses, and workforce training programs. Whew, that's a mouthful, okay? He says, whatever their intrinsic merits may be, the Common Core standards are dividing the nation as policymakers, teachers, parents, and whole communities in state after state rebel against them as being a bridge too far in the perceived federal takeover of education. Debates about what subjects should be taught in schools have rumbled through education from its earlier days, and the curriculum has changed along the way. Here's what I wanted to get to, and we'll follow this path very quickly. Back in ancient Rome, education was based on seven liberal arts or sciences. So it was the grammar stage, the formal structure of language, rhetoric, composition, presentation of argument, dialectic, formal logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, okay? So you had grammar, which is the beginning level of any subject, right? So you have, in the grammar stage, you have learning your ABCs, learning the basic colors, learning basic numbers and properties of using numbers. Anything in the humanities having to do with social studies, you learn a base, this is my town, this is my house, this is my community, right? Very basic, the grammar stage, the very basic. Then you get to the rhetoric, composition, and presentation of argument, okay? Rhetoric, composition, and then presentation. So rhetoric is the ability to teach someone else what you know, right? You know enough information once you've really studied a lot in the grammar stage. Now it's a chance to do something with the knowledge that you have. Can you teach this to someone? Can you write about it, okay? Composition and then presentation. And then you have dialectic, okay, which is formal logic, higher level thinking in the subjects of math, geometry, music, and astronomy. Okay, so this dominated education pretty much throughout time, especially across Europe and even into the Middle Ages. Then the Renaissance happened, okay? And in the 15th and 16th century, some schools brought in other subjects like spelling, drama and the arts, music, drawing, dancing. Sports became, wrestling and jousting, all those things, those were also added into curriculum, okay? Now, that met with a lot of rebellion from the traditionalists, the classicists, because they believed that their education system was correct. And so the Renaissance happened, and it was met with a lot of controversy, okay? So this is not new. That way of teaching has pretty much stayed the same until like about the mid-19th century, turn of the century, okay? Then 3 seismic social changes happened, okay? Huge. I mean, this was really, and we're in the middle of this right now with the pandemic, which is why I'm saying this. 3 seismic social changes reshaped curriculum. The growing impact of science and technology was changing the intellectual climate, okay? The spread of industrialism was changing the economic landscape. So with the Industrial Revolution, this completely changed the world, completely changed it. And the new science of psychology was proposing new theories about intelligence and how people learn. So as education expanded, then a whole new type of curriculum was created. And so it is useful to, he says, it is useful to think of the curriculum in terms of these 4 categories. And I'm going to show them here on the screen: structure, content, mode, and ethos. By content, we're talking about material that needs to be learned, okay? Material that needs to be learned. So the structure is basically how the day is created so that the information needs to be disseminated, right? So how is it conceived? Structure is how is it conceived, as well as the relationship between the elements. So when you look at the subjects, how are we going to teach this? And then what is the relationship between the various elements? How do all the subjects sort of work together? Okay. By content, it's the material that has to be learned. Okay. Because of preoccupation with academic learning, the emphasis is usually on theory and analysis rather than practical or vocational skills. Theory and analysis, but no way of taking that and making it applicable in real life. Then we have mode. He says this is how when students engage with the curriculum, whether it's desk-based or project-based. Desk-based is a child sitting at a desk with books and papers and working on their own, just, you know, trying to read and answer questions and fill out tests and quizzes, okay? Project-based is what I showed you with High Tech High School. Is it individual or collaborative? Individual or collaborative, desk-based or project-based. So when you think about a job that you're in, how many of you have jobs where you just sit at a desk? Now, I do because I work from home, but I have the freedom to work at home. If I was in an office, I would either be in a cubicle or I'd be in an office building, and I would have to work with other people and collaborate. I couldn't just sit in, and then some jobs where they're like that, where you're just sitting in a cubicle, you still have to interact with other people, right? And then ethos, he means the general atmosphere or a character of schooling, the silent messages about priorities and values that the curriculum conveys. This is what the education system calls the hidden curriculum. The dominant ethos of the standards movement is that school is a kind of steeplechase, the purpose of which it is to clear the frequent obstacles of tests and assessments, and there are always winners and losers. That's sort of how the current school curriculum is created. So our children are like racehorses. They're conditioned to have to, you got to do this, you've got to run, you've got to go through all the courses, you've got to check all the boxes so that when you go to college, and I've heard it said from several people, man, when I got to college, I was not prepared. I was not ready. Or on the flip side of that, I love when my students have written me back and years later and said, Miss Ronay, thank you so much for teaching us what you did in class, because I was the only one in my class who knew how to stand up and give a presentation. I was the only one in my class who knew how to formulate a group and work on a group project. And that just made me so happy. Now, these sometimes were my students that gave me the biggest trouble. And then come back to me, Miss Ronay, you're not gonna believe this. Yes, I will believe it, because that's what real life is like, right? So how do we begin to change the dynamic? How do we begin to change the conversation? Well, I'm going to introduce you to the 8 C's, all right? 8 things, 8 significant things that Mr. Robinson came up with. There are 8 competencies. They all begin with the letter C. And when you think about these and hear these in order, you're going to love what they are and realize how simple they are. And so why do we complicate this? Okay. So the conventional curriculum is based on a collection of separate subjects which are thought to be self-evidently important. That's one of the problems. The proper starting point is to ask what students should know and be able to do as a result of their education, right? This question has led to various attempts to reframe the curriculum in terms of competencies. So rather than teaching it based on subjects it's more about mastering a subject, right? Than just passing a test. Each competency is relevant to the 4 basic purposes of education that I talked about yesterday, right? So I'm going to go through these and just skim these because there's 8 of them, but they all start with the letter C, which makes it really easy for us to remember and understand, okay? So the first one is curiosity. We know that little ones come into the world and they are so curious, and when they're in the toddler stage, that curiosity is on steroids, figuratively. But they don't stop asking, what's this? What's this? What's this? Mom, 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 right? They're so full of questions. So curiosity is the ability to ask questions and explore how the world works. Young children have a ready appetite to explore whatever draws their interest. When their curiosity is engaged, they will learn for themselves, learn from each other, and from any source that they can lay their hands on. Knowing how to nurture and guide your students' curiosity is the gift of all great teachers. Like I said, when I would find out the dynamic of my classroom and I knew, okay, about a month in, these are the kids that I have this year, and this is what they're capable of. Okay, let's go. This is going to be a blast. And that's how I looked at teaching English to these students. And because I knew that, I knew how they learned, and I knew ways to get them involved and curious about what we were talking about. They do that by encouraging students to investigate and inquire for themselves, by posing questions rather than only giving answers, and by challenging them to push their thinking deeper by looking forward. You know, another thing I did in class when I taught is rather than, there were times when I had to stand in front of the classroom and talk, but a lot of times I would sit down at the tables with them like we were at a board meeting. I would even arrange the table so it would look like a conference room. And I would say, all right, guys, so here's what we're going to tackle today. Who's got ideas, right? Curiosity on steroids is right. You've got a toddler, right? So they are, but they're learning at such an incredible pace. And statistics have shown that most children do all of the main learning that they need to do to survive from in the first 5 to 6 years of their life. Everything that they need to learn to survive is learned in those first 5 years. So knowing how to nurture and guide students' curiosity is the gift of all great teachers. For some of us, curiosity about some things may be short-lived and quickly satisfied, but for others, it may become a sustaining passion on which whole lives and careers are spent. You got a little one that loves tinkering with things, can't stay away from tools and those kind of things. You got a little one that likes to be in the kitchen a lot, stirring and pouring. They may be a chef or they might be a scientist. You don't know. You've got 2 toddlers. Goodness. Well, you know what? That's okay though, Rachel. You've got patience, my sweet. You do. Your composure and your mannerisms, and you got a girl and a boy, right? Hello, Miss Mary. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you. So imagine that creativity, that curiosity. In any case, a lifelong sense of curiosity is one of the greatest gifts that schools can give their students. If you're able to train your students so that when they leave your classroom, that they take that love of curiosity out there and they approach everything in life with the same curiosity, that's going to really serve them well later on in life. Now, so that was the first one. Here's the second one. You know, I've talked about this a lot. Do something creative every day. So creativity, this is the ability to generate new ideas and apply them in practice. Let me say that again. Think of that as a definition. Creativity, the ability to generate new ideas and apply them in practice, right? Have you ever come up with an idea of something, maybe something to do in the kitchen, or a new way to configure something, or a new way of laying something out, or organizing things? Have you ever come up with something like that that was creative, that you were able to apply immediately and do, right? It's an amazing feeling. So imagine what that can do to our students when they're allowed to take their creativity and see it play out, and not only have an impact on them, but an impact on a room. So when my students would go through, we'd have the presentation portion, and they would pitch. Some of them, they pitched these fantasy hotels where you could come and get all the services that you could get. Some of them had a nonprofit for a cause that they really believed in, that was important, that was going to really change things, and have, like, free food pickup in neighborhoods. I mean, they came up with all kinds. Cars that they would develop that would be, you wouldn't have to use gasoline, but that would take you all kinds of places and were affordable. I mean, they came up with so many great ideas, pitching all from apples to apples cards. And they were funny, and they had to take the funny descriptions and sort of weave those into their product descriptions, and make it so it was kind of challenging sometimes when you had a green, hairy, whatever, but you had to sell it to the rest of your classmates. And then the class voted on who had the most creative presentations. And it was so much fun. And I said, you guys are gonna vote. I'll be the tiebreaker if I need to be, but you guys are gonna vote. So that was so much fun, because I was motivating them to do it on their own, right? So as individuals, we all create our own lives through our own perspectives that we develop, the choices we make, and the talents and passions that we may discover and pursue. Developing young people's creative abilities is central to meeting all four purposes of education. Being creative is at the heart of being human and all of its cultural progress. Our powers of creativity may also be our undoing. Many of the challenges we face are the products of our creativity, in the conflicts between different cultures and our collective abuse of the natural environment. So in that respect, with their poor imaginations, let's see, in that respect, it's not lemurs or dolphins with their poor imaginations who are putting the climate at risk by how they choose to live. It's us. It's us with our rich imaginations and powers of creativity. So the answer now is not to suppress our creativity, but to cultivate it more seriously with a greater sense of purpose. That's what we should be giving to our students. Now, the next item, the next C, is criticism. Now, when you hear that word, okay, it's always taken in the pejorative. It's always taken like, I'm criticizing you for something. But here's a different definition for that. The ability to analyze information and ideas and to form reasoned arguments and judgments. Okay? Critical thinking, not criticizing thinking, okay? The ability to think clearly, to consider arguments logically, and to weigh evidence dispassionately is one of the hallmarks of human intelligence. Of all the lessons history has taught us, this one is evidently the hardest to practice. Critical thinking involves more than just formal logic. It involves interpreting what's intended, understanding the context, fathoming hidden values and feelings, discerning motives, detecting bias, and presenting concise conclusions in the most appropriate forms. All of that takes practice and coaching. Why I did it for 4 years throughout a student's high school years, because I told them, after you've had 4 years with me, believe me, I will have you ready to be able to do these things repeatedly, where you're able to just draw upon it when you need it. Critical thinking was always important to human flourishing, and it is becoming even more so. We are now bombarded from every direction with information, opinions, ideas, and pitches for our attention. The internet alone is the most ubiquitous source of information that humans have devised, and it is growing exponentially. But so are the risks of confusion and obfuscation. There are immense benefits in the digital revolution for the education of all young people, but at the same time, the need has never been greater for them to separate fact from opinion, sense from nonsense, and honesty from deception. How are they able to discern truth from what we see on social media? Whew. I used to tell my students, don't just, I love Wikipedia. It's a great starting point, but it is user developed and user contributed, so we can't be sure where the information is coming from. How do you know your sources are credible and verifiable? You do that by having clear, critical thinking. The next C is communication, the ability to express thoughts and feelings clearly and confidently in a range of media and forms. Listen, I loved that after we studied A Tale of Two Cities in the French Revolution, I gave my students their, the end project, and this was a year-end project too. So they could present to the class. They had to write out their paper to me and outline and with all of their sources and submit that to me. But then they had to prepare a 2 to 3 minute presentation to the class. Well, I had so many interesting presentations, and one of them that to this day, and I think I have the disc, and it was his very first attempt at this, but I had a student create a 14-minute short film. A 14-minute short film. And when he presented it to the class, everybody's like, I don't want to present after him, after Anderson. Anderson then went on to do other film work for things in Nashville, and he's now working for an agency out in Jacksonville. But he created a 14-minute short film on an artist that was in the French Revolution and it involved music clips and video clips and narration, and it was incredible. I was blown away, and I loved that I was able to do that and give my students the chance to present what they thought. I had another student, it was a girl, she did a whole psychological profiling after we studied Frankenstein, and she wanted to profile whether or not certain serial killers, what motivated them to take their victims the way they did. And she based this all off of the story of Frankenstein and did all of this forensic research. I mean, it was incredible to see what my students were able to do. So our students should be able to express themselves very clearly and confidently in a range of media. Maybe it's something they're writing. Maybe they're going to create a film. Then maybe they're going to go out and do a live stream. Maybe they're going to write something really incredible. But it's important that our students have those skills to do that. So fluency in reading, writing, and mathematics are accepted imperatives, and they should be. But verbal communication is not only about literal meanings, it's also about appreciating things like metaphor, analogy, allusion, and other poetic and literary forms of language. Communication is not only about words and numbers, it's about the way it's presented, the way it's produced, and its purpose, right? So the ability to form and communicate our thoughts and feelings in all these ways is fundamental to personal well-being and collective achievement, right? So the next one is collaboration. This is the ability to work constructively with others. Again, I had mentioned to you before how I broke my classroom up into teams and they worked on project-based things as opposed to, give me the answer to question number 12. How boring is that? And I even told my students, we're not gonna do that. I'm just gonna tell you right now, I'm not the teacher to do that. I don't wanna have to sit at home and grade piles of papers to see if you got the answer correct to question number 9, okay? I wanted to see them live and act and do the work as opposed to just reading it. Right. I mean, it's so much fun. And it made reading the literature that much more interesting. And I can tell you to this day, if I were to tag one of my students and ask them a question about their favorite book in class, they'd be able to do it just like that. And remember stories we read, Rachel, if you're still on here, remember when we read The Scarlet Pimpernel and studied the French Revolution? And Rachel graduated 14 years ago, right? So, and she's a mom with two, and yet she can remember what we talked about in class. So the ability to work together as teams, because we know in real life, we work in our jobs and have to work with other people. How are our students going to know how to do that? By reading reading text and writing answers on a piece of paper and then taking a test. Are they really equipped to go into a job and have interpersonal skills, right? And by doing that, by working collaboratively with others, okay, so you have collaboration. Well, then the next one sort of comes automatically. Compassion, the ability to empathize with others and act accordingly. Yes, it's still one of your favorites. See, I love that, Rachel, right? And that's something that you can share even with others. You know, Miss Renee may not be around, or, you know, I may be long gone, but you're able to still pass on the love of that story because it was made real to you. And we had such a great time studying that. So again, when you're able to have compassion, it's identifying with the feelings of others and especially with their suffering. Compassion is rooted in empathy. It begins by recognizing in ourselves the emotions that others are feeling and how we should feel, how we would feel if we were in the same circumstances. Guys, a lot of that's going on right now. People are protesting and talking about, do you understand why we have a problem with this? Why we're scared? Why this has got to stop? It's got to stop. So many of the problems that young people face are rooted in lack of compassion. You see older kids treating littler kids mean. They learned that. They learned that. Bullying, violence, emotional abuse, social exclusion, and prejudices based on ethnicity, culture, sexuality are all fueled by failures of empathy. In the wider adult world, culture conflicts and toxic social divisions are ignited and inflamed by these failures too. As the world becomes more independent, cultivating compassion is a moral and practical imperative. It is also a spiritual one. Practicing compassion is the truest expression of our common humanity and our deepest source of happiness. In schools, compassion has to be practiced, not preached. Okay? Do we feel like our current school systems operate in that sense of compassion, or are they ramrodded through the halls like cattle, just totally zoned in on their screens and have no idea what's going on with the person next to them, right? And then the next one is composure, the ability to connect with the inner life of feeling and develop a sense of personal harmony and balance. We live in two worlds, the one within us and the world around us. The standard-driven curriculum is full of the outer world. It does little to help people fathom the world within them. Yet how we act in the world around us is deeply affected by how we see and feel about ourselves. Many young people now suffer from stress and anxiety and depression in school. Why are these children facing depression issues in school? For some, these feelings are caused by school. For some, it's the life they lead outside the school. In all cases, these feelings can lead to boredom, disengagement, anger, or worse. Schools can mitigate the effects by changing their cultures. Schools that have become places that children, you know, they can't wait to get there. They're so happy to be there. I know for me, when I was in high school, that's how my high school experience was. I had some tremendous teachers who gave me freedom and creativity to really grow in the skills. It's why I studied journalism. It's why I became a writer. It's why I love working with words, because of Mr. Ramirez, Mr. Rudy Ramirez, who really saw the creativity in me and nurtured it and encouraged me and gave me all kinds of opportunities. I cried when I left high school. I hugged him so closely because he had been such a driving force in my life. And that I was able to leave school and move to Dallas and get a job at a radio station was my proudest moment. And I even came back to the high school to then speak to the students in the upcoming classes about how my path led me into my job. So once they have that, once our students are able to collaborate, to have compassion, have composure, well, the next thing is citizenship. The ability to engage constructively with society and participate in the processes that sustain it. This is how we create thriving individuals that will contribute to the welfare of our society and our country. So if you see the breakdown of what's going on in our world, we're seeing a product of something that we have created, and we've got to fix it. We've got to fix it. We've got to help our students really understand who they are, why they're here, and make it important to them. So, what's worth knowing? Well, a lot. And if you want to know more, you can grab a copy of this incredible book called Creative Schools by Ken Robinson. I've been sharing out of this all month. I hope you've enjoyed it. And more importantly, I really enjoyed having some coffee with you and sharing some of these things that we've discussed. Yeah. Young children depression is becoming an issue. You love on your babies often so you can feel their vibes. You can feel the heaviness on them, right, Miss Mary? And it shouldn't be that way. We've got to make some changes. So one of the changes is by educating ourselves, by becoming aware of what's going on, reading some of these fabulous books, and really becoming involved in our community or even here. If you have a question about education, if you've got a student who is facing some challenges because of what's happened with the pandemic, their school has been closed, or maybe you're a parent who is a little concerned about what's going to happen in the fall. How are we going to come back to school? What's it going to look like? And how is it going to affect your children? So if you have any questions, if you're not quite sure what the answer is, or maybe you just want to chat with someone who has a little bit of experience in this to help your student sort of get past any obstacles and anxiety that they have going into the school year, please let me know how I can help. You can contact me on my website at roneharden.com/contact. You can also leave me a message here in the comment thread of this video, or you can send me a message through the platform if you're watching me on either YouTube or Facebook here on my page. Please feel free to shoot me a message and let me know. And guys, I'm excited because I am developing my YouTube channel. So if you would, I'd really appreciate it if you would go to my YouTube channel here at youtube.com/Rone Harden and subscribe to the content so that as you open the YouTube app, you'll see my information come up and some new videos. I'm going to be uploading a lot of new content over the summer. I hope you will join me there and follow me as I share posts about it here on my page. And more importantly, I want to thank you guys for all the support and the love you've given me over the years on social media. As I try these new things, I appreciate you giving me your time. And more importantly, I sip and salute you for being an awesome friend. So if I can help you, please let me know. And more importantly, I hope you'll join me here on my page and on my YouTube channel for more conversations with a great cup of coffee. We'll talk books, we'll talk some interesting people, and more importantly, we'll talk about our words and sharing our stories, because that's really what's going to make a difference. All right, guys, thanks for giving me your time this morning. I know we've got long, but this is going to be the last live I do for the month of June. Please stay tuned. I've got a lot of new content coming. I'll keep you posted. So the way you're going to stay informed is to make sure you get notifications from my page. Please like my Facebook page and also go to my YouTube channel where I'll be sharing a lot of my content there as well. Thanks, guys, so much. Really love having you here, and I'll look forward to the next time we get together for a cup of coffee. Take care.